This episode is brought to you by John Blake Sales Breakthrough Solutions, helping you to at least double the amount of leads that you get that convert into paying clients.
Welcome to the Master Dealmakers Secrets Podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
All right, so I have got Nicky Thomas with me. I'm particularly stoked. We've known each other for a while. We met each other doing a panel, I believe, years and years ago. I don't even know how many years that was ago.
That. You're right.
Yeah. And Nicky's had a really interesting journey. She will probably give you a little bit more. I mean, I've introduced her, but she can probably expand on what she does. It's sort of been ever evolving since we first started our conversation. And she's doing some fantastic work and has probably focused on women in the last few years, but is starting to do some work with men around empowerment and boundaries, and really, I think getting a clearer sense of self. But there's just been so many iterations of what you've done, and your evolution's been really impressive to watch. So I'm excited to chat to you today and to find out what you've been up to. We had you on a couple of years ago, I think, and we sort of talked about a bit of stuff then. But yeah, I'm excited to chat. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I was laughing because impressive is one word to speak about the evolution, isn't it? When you're behind the scenes of that, it doesn't always feel impressive. But yeah, thank you for that.
But that's part of the message, right?
Absolutely. One of my core pillars is you can change your mind, desire, or direction at any time. And I must say that's probably been one of the most challenging ones for me to live and breathe what I teach. That's been the one that's challenged me the most. So.
Hard to be an example of your own best advice.
Oh my God, isn't it just so brutal on you when you're like, shit, now I have to do it.
But in that is always is such a great message, because it's like, especially for what we do, because we're working with people, we're trying to help people to get past the things that we've encountered, in our careers or, in our journey. And I find that some of the best advice is, so if you were advising yourself, what would you say?
Yes.
What advice would you give yourself? And that's where it comes back to,
yeah.
If you had yourself standing in front of you, what advice would you give yourself? And sometimes it's really difficult to be your own best example of your own best advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I did a bit of reflection work with the turn of the new year this year, and it was exactly that. Like, oh my God, I wish I had done this reflection work sooner, because what I thought was going on for me and what I was actually doing were two very different things. And you're right, like for me anyway, when I can have that drop in and have that experience, that's what creates transformation with my clients, because I'm like, I know exactly what's happening for you right now. I did it, so yeah.
And it's interesting because you can identify it straight away, but you can't just tell them straight away.
Oh, hell no.
It's like you've got to create that space where they can, very similar to sales, where I used to have this joke with when I used to do a lot of work with retail sales teams, where it's like someone walks in, and unfortunately you can't say, right, you, those shorts and that t-shirt now.
Can you imagine? I reckon about 10% of the population would really appreciate that.
Yeah.
But the rest of them might not.
But you can't do that. You've got to approach, you've got to, give them a statement of fact. You've got to then reapproach, there's so many things that, you can't necessarily get away with. And, it's a series of discovery, a process of discovery that you go through with somebody.
And essentially too, I think that's really important, because like, even if you do come with that approach, they're always going to come to you to ask for the advice. And so, I often say I'm working with my clients to get them away from me, whatever the journey is with us. I want to teach you to do this for yourself until you don't need to ask me the question anymore, which shorts and which shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about, not wanting to umbilicalize yourself to clients,
Yeah.
like at some point, you've got to be able to say, hey, this is all you now. In fact,
Yeah, like
I
off you
think
go, sail.
I remember saying that to you at some point.
I'm pretty sure you probably did, John. It's funny. It's funny that you bring up that how we met. I was like, far out. That was so long ago. And when I reflect back on, who I was when we first met, it's like, holy shit, the same thing. You could have given me the answers right then and there, and I would not have listened. So yeah, the guidance process, and even the way you kind of tap in every now and then and pop a little comment on my social media, and I'm like, still knows, he's still watching me, still knows what's going on. You just hit the nail on the head. You know what I mean? It's that little bit of help along the way. So
yeah. But but in especially in what we do, and I think in what anyone does, like you have those moments of where you're not being your own best example of your own best advice. And then in creeps the the imposter. It's like, wow. And you become really hard on yourself. And one of the things that I've noticed, because I love music, and I'm started playing live, and that's exciting. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and it's taken me 20 years since I started playing the guitar to a point where I can actually do that. But one of the things I noticed is that all the best musos and all the best, speakers and all the best comedians, the ones that are just really at the top of their game, they're on that precipice of self-doubt, and that's what it is that really makes them want to go that, try that extra, and be really detailed and meticulous and particular about all the things that they do, because they're just teetering on that precipice of self-doubt, and am I doing it? How did I go? Did people like it? All that sort of stuff. So it's
they care.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a blessing, and it's also a curse as well, because it holds in it that seed of self-doubt, which you want to try and avoid if you can, but it's always there.
Yeah, I kind of say that a lot. Actually, a lot of the marketing that I'll do, get rid of fear and get rid of self-doubt has sort of shifted, because actually you don't want to get rid of it. Actually, you want to use it, right? And that's kind of what you're saying too. You're on that precipice where you're using it to be better, not using it to let yourself retreat,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I went and did this, I'll talk about it because it's kind of fresh in my head, but, went and did this, and it's just, a local pub, and there was, there's probably about 20 people in the restaurant, and I had a line of sight to about probably 8 different people in the restaurant.
Yeah.
And you know what it's like. You're in a restaurant, you're in there to talk to your family, have a feed, maybe you're having an important conversation with your wife, or, or discussing something. You're not really thinking about the dude in the corner playing the guitar and singing.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
unless he's really bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless he's really bad, he's not getting your attention.
So like I get to the end of the first song, and there's part of me that's sort of thinking, geez, I wonder if anyone's going to clap.
Yeah. Does anyone like it?
And
it's
good
just enough? Like,
and there's dead silence. And I finished the first set, and I'm like, geez, I wonder.
Man, that is personal development on steroids, isn't it? Self-assurance, self-validation in that space.
Like, that's it. And as it turns out, I had a couple of people, a couple of the staff and a couple of the punters come up and tell me that they enjoyed it at the end.
Thank God. Like, yeah. Thank God.
But it's like that thing where on the I'm sure you've seen the video of the New York subway, where they've got like, one of the world's most premier violinists, and he's playing, and no one is giving him anything. Like he is, everyone's totally ignoring him. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And the obvious one is that, people are busy, they're trying to get from A to B. But the second reason is that the vast majority of people aren't tuned in to what fantastic music sounds like. They're not tuned into that. Like if I was to walk past and hear someone, like, I'd go, wow, that guy's really good because I've got an ear for it.
You got the
Whereas
ear,
the
yeah.
vast majority of people walk past it and they're just not tuned in for that.
They're like, oh, that's nice, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh,
Mind you, people are
there's
paying
someone
him
playing the
hundreds of
guitar. I
dollars a
mean, there's
seat.
someone
Yeah,
playing the
exactly.
violin.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's interesting. So tell me about some of the work and the breakthroughs that you're having with the people that you're working with. I mean, what I perceive is obviously going to be very different to what it is that you're doing, but it's like, it I get a sense that you're working with women that perhaps feel like they're stuck. They're in a they've almost like they're sort of cornered in their world, and they want to kind of break out of that, but they've got opposing forces in the people around them that have a particular expectation of what they what they can and can't do, and it's like asserting themselves in those type situations. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So usually people will come to me and they're attracted to the messaging because they've never felt it, like the warrior energy that, I'm going to stand up for myself, I'm going to say what I want. They're either attracted to it because they've never felt it, or they're attracted to it because they know that they've done that before and they know they're fully capable of it, but something's happened in their world. So they've either had a significant event like, some workplace bullying, or they've been sacked, or there's been a marriage breakdown, or some kind of big thing has happened and they've lost that confidence. And that's, I find they're even more frustrated because they're harder on themselves, because they're like, I know I'm better than this. You know what I mean? I know I can step up. I know I can do that job, but they've lost that confidence. So, so they absolutely come in, and it's usually a really, intricate process of unpacking what's underneath all of that.
Yeah.
What's underneath all of that fear and that challenge and the belief sets and who they think they are, and identity, as you would know, and then back to that breakthrough where they go, oh, that's right, I remember this now. But almost like we said before, John, like I'm holding their hand. I say, dependency creates independency. So they depend on me for a little while until they're back into that independent space. And those that have never felt it before, that's a whole period of just risk-taking, courage for them to step out of, who they've identified with their whole lives. But as soon as they get some success, you probably say this as well, success breeds success. Then we start to build on that. We start to build on that trust bank that they're creating for themselves, so they can get that internal validation. So they can sit on a stage and have no one clap and be like, no, that's okay.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's interesting that you should say that, because my wife said to me, she goes, well, you're obviously not doing it for the money.
Yeah, no,
like,
you're doing it for the love.
You really don't, you really don't get paid enough at all,
No.
although I'm sure some musicians, that's what they do, and that's how they get their money. But
yeah, it's probably a bit like coaching. We all start off, charging nothing, don't we? And then it's experience and brand, and who you are is more important than what you can do sometimes if you're building a brand.
Yeah, exactly. So that's fascinating. They people that they used to have it, but somehow they've fallen off. They've lost their sort of way along that track. And then there's people that have never had it. I mean, straight away when you explain those two scenarios, I'm reminded of what we do with salespeople, because one of the things that we're doing at the moment is working with companies to hire salespeople, and we're taking it right from working out the actual profile of the person that they want to making sure that we've selected the right person. There's a whole bunch of screening that we do. It's like a behavior profile, but the whole process comes back to this single question. It's like, how can we set this guy up for success? What is it that we can do to hedge our bets so that when he starts to when he makes his first sale, which for a salesperson is crucial, because if until you've made that first sale in a new sales role, there's the confidence is not there. But
100%.
Once you've made that first sale, you're off. And without that, without that confidence, you they're not going to last. They're not going to stay. So it's like
100%. Like I said, your job is to get them to that first sale so they can feel it, right? Yeah.
So I had a guy, a client that I've worked with for a number of years now, and they had hired 2 different people in this role, and both of them had resigned. So they'd gone through the process of hiring them, getting them set up, training them on the product, and there was a number of reasons why, but both of them had left. And so they were on their 3rd try. It's like, what do we need to do? And so I had a look at what they were doing, and it was like, okay, well, geez, you really didn't set this guy up to succeed. If anything, you actually set him up to fail. He didn't really have a lot of expectation around, and it wasn't just the training part of it, but that was a big part of it. But it was like, what did you actually do in terms of what he was expecting? Like what did you do to help him to get clear on what he could expect from everybody else around him? And so once we put all that in place and there was clarity on all of that, the guy was the new guy. It was just like a whole other universe. And then I checked
just
back
nailed
in,
it.
90 days later, and he'd hit all of his 30-day targets, his 60-day targets, his 90-day targets, all of the activity, so that he was never in a situation where he sort of rocked up to work and he was scratching his head going, well, what am I going to do today? All the activity was all mapped out. So
so lots of certainty for him. Here's my job, here's your job, here's what I'll do, here's what you can do. Like taking away all of that guesswork.
Yeah. So the confidence thing is just massive. It's just it's such a simple thing, but once it's there, it's the spark plug that makes the engine work in so many different contexts. I mean, I'm crapping on about sales all the time, but within a marriage, or within a relationship with siblings, or with a relationship with children, or in a relationship with a parent, that can be massive, because they all have this set of behaviors that they've been conditioned to expect. So I guess a good question is, how do you achieve escape velocity? Like what is it that how is it that you prepare for people for the resistance that they're going to get, the pushback that they're going to get?
Just to step into their confidence. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because they're going to step into their confidence, and they know that there's been a shift, but did all the other people around them get the memo? It's like,
yes, I say that so much, and it's so interesting that you bring it back to relationship, because it's so funny. Like people come to me so often for the business or the career progression, or I've got these goals that I want to achieve, but we very often end up working in the relationship space, because how you're relating in one space is probably happening everywhere. So to step people into that and to prepare them, as you say, for the resistance that they're going to receive is I don't blow wind up people's ass. You know that about me. And I work more on the courage, like on having courage to go and do this, and on having the courage to do it and not be attached to the outcome. So again, you might go to somebody like a family member, a parent, a child, a spouse, a work colleague that you've had conflict with, and you can show up as the best person in the world, and you can do all the work that you need to do, and they're still going to give you grief, right? And that's okay, isn't it? Like that's because you can only do what you can do. So, like there's in that conversation, there's 100% responsibility, but you're only responsible for your part.
Your half
you
of
can
it.
only do your part. Yeah, exactly. Your 50%, and they're responsible for their 50%. And what I find is people are often trying to change someone else rather than trying to show up differently themselves. So number one, you really do have an impact when you change the way you show up and the way you communicate and the way you think behind all of that. Like we can all be taught how to communicate, but John, like the energy behind it, the intention behind it changes the whole message, depending on whether you're coming from aggression or fear or righteousness or whatever it might be. When you can come from a different place of openness and curiosity, and create a different conversation, and you've done everything you can, if that person still isn't receptive, that's it. There's nothing more you can do, but you had the courage and you build the trust with yourself. And more often than not, you're going to have more responses that come back to you positively than negatively, even in sales, even when people say no, you know, like I'm sure I've heard you say it's just a not yet, you know what I mean? Or maybe it's not the right time, or maybe they're not looking. I know you've got your little triangle scale of where people are at. And so it's like, you know, every single rejection is not actually a rejection.
Yeah, it's massive. You know, when you change, the world changes.
100%. Like, and how do you share that message? Because it sounds like such a lot of waffle, doesn't it? Like, I remember hearing it for the first time going, what? Like, how can I have that much power? But you really do. When you change, everything in your world changes, how you see things change. And a lot of the initial work that I do with people is getting them to notice that, because they'll do the hard work and they'll go and they'll show up in a situation differently, but it will feel so uncomfortable and it will feel so full of fear, you know, like jumping off a cliff kind of fear, that they'll forget what they've actually done, or they won't take a moment to recognize, oh, hang on, I did that differently. And even though it felt so scary, I did that, you know, because when they're sitting in fear, they're just like, I never want to feel that again.
And it's so easy because they've been conditioned to feel a certain way around certain people. So it's easy to you know, to fall back into that, especially when you know, when emotions get high. You know, awareness and intelligence is low. You know? So it's easy for you to just revert back and then you know, revert back to a previous behavior and then feel bad because you didn't do it the way that you wanted to do it. It didn't go the way that you wanted it to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's that period. I always say to people, there's the unawareness. So people, they're doing it a certain way of communication, or they're playing out the pattern and they're completely unaware to it. And then they become aware, and through whatever means, coaching or self-reflection or whatever. And then when they're aware and they pick themselves up, that's the longest phase, because that change in behavior, that's the hardest thing to do, isn't it? So like you said, you'll see yourself do it. You go, shit, I got triggered and I did that same old thing. And, you know, the tendency is to go, I got it wrong. And it's like, no, you didn't, because you picked yourself up on it. So now you've just got another notch in your belt, another notch in your belt. But that's the longest part of the stretch, is doing the work, isn't it?
Yeah, people don't give themselves credit for being aware. It's
exactly.
like it's like if you went into a situation and you didn't just click into automatic pilot, you went into that situation and sure, you still responded the same way that you always have, but you did it with awareness. So that's progress. That's not a reason to beat yourself up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it kind of goes against how we learn most things. So if you think about, you know, going to school or going to uni, or you know, like, here's the test, tick, you got the answer right, done. That knowledge is gone. Yeah. But in human behavior, and when you're working in the space of self-development, it's not a tick and done, is it? It's like, oh shit, messed it up. Oh shit, do it again. Oh, got it right. Oh, it fell over again. You know what I mean? There's a real bumpy ride. So you can't just go one and done.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, it's so easy to beat yourself up. I mean, you know, there's a couple of things that that sort of come to mind. One of the most powerful things that I have learned around, you know, how other people, you know, deal with you is sometimes there's a tendency, and it's, you know, I think that the you know, the popular term for it is gaslighting, you know, whereas the person says,
we all do it,
you know, and you talk to someone and they say, oh, and you say, oh yeah, you know, and this happened. And the person says, no, that's not how it happened at all. You know, that, no, you know, you've got that wrong. You know, oh, you know, are you okay? No, that's not how, you know, what, is something wrong with your memory? You know, blah, blah, blah. And there's two different, because we remember things differently, right?
Yeah, we experience things
there's
differently.
There's this whole thing of what's called, in fact, it's a psychological term. It's called revisionist history, right? So we revise things to suit our own agenda, our own map. And so if you're, you know, talking to somebody, especially someone who's close to you, and they say, oh no, you've got that wrong. No, that's not what, that wasn't the way it happened at all. Rather than having an argument about who's right and who's wrong, one of the best things that I've read recently is to simply say, we remember that differently.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ, that makes me want to smack you in the face.
How good is it? How good is it though?
Yeah.
We clearly remember that differently.
Yeah.
Because,
I don't say it that way. I say this is how I'm experiencing it. It's not the truth, but how I experienced it was X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. We obviously, well, that's the same thing, but you're expressing it from a personal perspective. But but when I read that, and I've actually used that when I've been in the presence of two other people that are that are having a difference of opinion about how something happened, and I've diffused a couple of arguments by saying, well, you guys obviously remember this differently.
Yeah, because how fierce are we with our memory? We're like, no, this is what happened. And it's like, again, as soon as you can move into the space of possibility, it's possible that I experienced it differently to you, isn't it? It's just possible that maybe I had a different thing going on than what you had going on. And from that place, it's like, we can be a little bit more open and forgiving, and hopefully come to some kind of resolution rather than like you said, arguing like a lawyer, the facts, the right, the wrong. It's like, mate, you'll be right, but you will be alone the rest of your life.
Because who knows who's right and who's wrong?
Correct. Is anybody even right? Because again, you're observing it from a third party perspective and you're like, well, actually, I'm seeing a whole nother thing here. So, yeah.
And the other experience around, changing, when you change, the world changes around you, was that sort of came up for me as you were talking before, was my experience of giving up drinking.
Wow.
Yeah.
I speak to so many people who are going through that journey at the moment. Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I gave up drinking. It'll be 4 years in April.
Wow.
So and it's so funny. It's like, alcohol is the only drug that when you tell somebody that you've given it up, they assume that you've got a problem.
There's something wrong with you. Yeah, exactly. Like, what's wrong with you, mate? Here, have a drink, especially in our culture. I think, I don't know, Europeans quite the same. But it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, a really big personal development journey. One of my girlfriends did it for a year, like gave up drinking for a year. And I interviewed her about that specific topic because it was like, well, how does that reflect on you? And again, even some of my clients that have done it and they're like, oh, we can't go on dates anymore. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, who made it that you had to drink to go on a date? You know what I mean? Like, so conditioned, isn't it?
Yeah, it was quite bizarre because, I mean, the reason that I gave it up is because I just got to a point where I'd just have like one beer and I'd get a headache straight away. Or I'd have 2 beers and I'd wake up with a headache the next day, and the headache would last for, and so it was just like, wow, I'm just not getting anything out of this at all. I'm not getting drunk.
Habit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so I gave it up, and it's been 4 years. And what I've noticed is that you're training all of the people around you. And what I've found is that it takes about 3 exposures to your peer group to get yourself to a point where they accept that you don't drink anymore.
Like, oh, that's a thing now. You're not just saying it.
Yeah, because the first time they're going to go, come, mate, what are you doing? Like, what are you?
Yeah.
Come, mate, we're watching the footy. Have a beer.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah,
and you're like, no, I'm good. And then the second time they'll try it on again, and then the third time they'll probably try it on again. But after that, you're done.
They're good.
They're just not even going. They're not even going to offer. And if anyone else offers it to you, they're going to go, mate, what are you talking about? Like, the guy doesn't drink anymore. And because they're your friends, they'll start to defend the choice that you've made, and other people, will actually start to fall in line. But in most people that are sort of anywhere from 40, maybe late 30s, 40s, 50s, it's probably going to take you a couple of years to go through all of those peer groups.
Yep.
And that's why it takes a while to get to that sort of escape velocity.
Yeah.
So that you know, that
Absolutely.
was a really interesting thing around, you know, personal empowerment and sort of training the people
And did
around
you,
you.
John, when you did that, did you go through a period of feeling a bit disconnected? Like, how was your belonging in that space? Like, you know, in the initial phases when people were like, oh, you're different. Like, how did that feel for you?
Oh, like, so straight away, I had friends that I realized, and through no fault of theirs or mine, but I
Yeah.
had friends that I realized that that was the only thing I had in common with them.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bang in the head,
And
isn't
then
it?
and
Like,
then once
oh,
and then once that was off the table,
mm,
I didn't find myself hanging out, you know, because that was the thing that we had in common. And interestingly enough, I was talking to the guy who he actually owns the restaurant where I did the gig, and
mm,
I was talking to him, and he said, "Oh, I gave up drinking," and since then he's just become this, like, he's just the most incredibly fit looking dude. He goes to the gym every
mm,
day, and you know, he you know, literally looks like you know, like a bodybuilder out of a bloody
mm,
bodybuilding magazine. His
mm.
transformation has just been incredible. But what he said to me is, he said, I was drinking 3 bottles of bourbon a week. A lot of people who listen to the podcast want to know what we do over at Master Dealmaker Secrets. And effectively what we do is we work with sales professionals and business owners all over the world who are seeing massive increases in their top line sales revenue. So we help business owners and sales professionals to effectively focus on the 3 key drivers to growing sales revenue in your business. The first one is controlling the message that you send out into the marketplace so that potential clients see and hear and read what you do as an opportunity as opposed to your competitors. The second thing that we do is we help you to create a direct path to the 20% of your ideal clients that will deliver 80% of the revenue. So everyone knows the 80-20 rule. We help you to develop a direct path to the 20% of the people that are going to give you 80% of your sales revenue in your business. And the third thing that we allow you to do, that we create a process for, is for you to be able to double the amount of leads that you get that convert into paying clients. So if this is of interest, we do have an application-only process to become involved in this particular program. And to get to there, all you need to do is to go to www.johnblakescall.com. So it's JOHNBLAKESCALL.com, and there's a couple of questions to answer there. And then what you'll do is get on a quick conversation with me, and I can find out a little bit more about what you've got going on in your business and see potentially whether what you are doing would be a fit for what we could help you with. And at that point, I can extend an invitation if it's a fit, and you can make the choice to come on board or not. So that's the opportunity. That would be the next step if you're looking at how you can take things to the next level. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on the podcast, if you're getting value from it, I invite you to do that, and I will look forward to talking to you. The website is www.johnblakescall.com. Talk to you soon.
That's drinking, huh?
And then and so he's given it up. But what he realized is that he had to actually he and his wife had to rediscover the, you know, they had to rediscover their relationship with each other. They end up having,
Yeah. Who are they?
yeah, because there
Mm.
was there was them without drinking, and then there was them with drinking, and it was like alcohol was like the third person.
Mm. Oh, I
Was the way
totally
he
hear
described it
that.
to me.
Yeah.
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 Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And a crutch in a lot of relationships too, because you can let a lot of barriers down with alcohol, you know. So
yeah.
things that were a problem get forgotten, and yeah.
But he's just a totally different dude. He's, popped out
Mm.
the other end, and he's super happy, and he's,
Mm.
and it's been massive for his relationship and everything. So,
Mm. Like you said, taking that 2 years, like you're using an excellent example there because it's so tangible, the drinking thing. But, that happens too when you're going to start behaving differently, when you're going to start setting higher standards, when you're going to start respecting yourself and your time.
yeah,
It's a more intangible thing. Is it the same thing? It takes a good couple of years to retrain people. Oh, this is who you are now,
yeah,
So people are like, fix me in a week. I'm like, firstly, there's nothing to fix.
Yeah.
Next, we need some time. Yeah.
And that's what everyone that I've spoken, that's what I've said to everyone. It's like 80% of it is training all of the people around you to expect a different, a different outcome in the same circumstances, the same set of circumstances, and you're training the people around you to expect a different outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that a lot when I'm working with people, especially women who sit on the sort of more codependent side of things. All of a sudden, when they start to work on that, they start to realize there are a lot of people in their lives who lean more on the narcissistic side. I don't like to say they're narcissists because we all have narcissistic behaviors, but they lean more that way, and they get quite disappointed in themselves. Oh my God, are all the people in my life, narcissists who I've been attracted to? It's like, yeah, they fucking are. Because now you've shifted, but give them the opportunity to shift with you. You know what I mean? When we change, we have to have compassion that other people don't know who we are yet. So we have to, like you said, we get to three exposures. I love that. Like 3 exposures to go, hang on a minute, I'm not doing that anymore. Hang on a minute, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, until they sort of drop in. And some people will take longer than others. So
and some people will really resist it. Like, I remember rocking up to this party, and this this particular lady that I've known for a long time, like ever since I was a kid, and I've rocked up, and she said, "Oh, so what do you want to drink? You want a beer? You want a wine? You want champagne? You want a vodka? You want and I'm like, nah, I'm not, I'm not going to drink tonight." And I had a bottle of sparkling mineral water with me. And she's like, "Oh, come on, come on, what are you doing? Come on." And I just turned around and I said, "Are we still friends?"
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I said.
It's just a joke. Like,
yeah, I said, are we still friends? And that was, they were like, yeah. But sometimes that's what it takes.
Well,
if someone's really giving you a hard time, sometimes that's the kind of, what would you call it? The pattern interrupt.
Correct. Yeah.
It's like, hey,
absolutely.
this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. And this is how it's different.
Is that
now.
Okay? Are we still friends?
Yeah. And the thing too is, if we're not, that's cool. You know what I mean? And I think that's where the courage and confidence comes in too. Like, it's okay to let people go without judgment and just go, that's cool. We're in different places now,
Yeah. You do you.
Kitty boo boo. Yeah, exactly.
I'm doing me. You do you.
Yeah, it's funny though, isn't it? I went to a party at Christmas time and I took my 16-year-old and there was no non-alcoholic drinks there at all. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, so you provided no non-alcoholic drinks. So basically, I mean, despite the fact that he was underage, but even if I didn't want to drink, so I went over to Woolies and got some non-alcoholic drinks and brought them back. So I was like, I was really surprised.
Yeah, that's pretty full on, especially if it was how old was the kid?
16.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so certainly old enough. I said, like, if you want to have a drink, have a drink. But the fact that it wasn't an option and that kids were welcome, you know what I mean? And I was like, but just the fact that it wasn't an option, I think we know enough about health and wellness now to know that we should probably provide water or, non-alcoholic drinks. So yeah, I was really surprised. But anyway.
Yeah, I take kombucha because you can get it in in like a brown bottle.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like a King Brown.
Yeah.
And after 10 o'clock, no one notices anyway.
Yeah,
because they're all pissed.
I know, but even that, it's like, just so other people will leave you the F alone. You know what I mean? Like, here I've got this bottle that looks like a beer bottle. Oh, okay, well, that's all right. That's socially acceptable.
And then some people are like, why don't you drink 0% beer? And it's like, well, why even bother?
Because it tastes bad.
Yeah. It's like you're getting all of the downside, which is like the calories and, it's like, why not drink something that tastes better than beer?
Yeah.
I don't know that just I just can't get my head around that. It's like, well, if you're not going
Well,
to
again,
drink,
I
like,
think it's it's almost like a methadone program because it's a step out, isn't it? Like, well, it's beer
yeah,
still, but it's non-alcoholic. So we're gonna, it still socially fits in and it's still
yeah,
socially acceptable, and you'll be one of the tribe, but you
yeah.
won't, be having the alcohol. So yeah, I think we've just got a bit of a way to go culturally on that one, haven't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a interesting, and there's a whole industry around it which appears to be booming.
Yeah. Mate, it's
Non-alcoholic
the new,
wine and
yeah.
non-alcoholic beer, and it's
Yeah. And kudos to them. Like,
kind of like having
absolutely jump on the
a
bandwagon.
meatless hamburger,
Absolutely, right? Maybe non-alcoholic is the new vegan, maybe.
like just eat tofu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I know, right?
It is. So, and you mentioned that you've started working with guys. So, what are some of the
Mm,
differences? Obviously, women have got parents,
patterns. Yeah.
siblings, kids.
Mhm.
That they have. They might feel that they're sort of stuck in certain roles and all the rest of it. What about
Mm,
dudes? What are you finding that's different? I mean, obviously the process is, I would imagine, similar, but what are you finding
mm.
that you can help them
Yeah.
with the most?
So quite similarly, they have expectation on roles, but in a different way. And I think there's a little bit of confusion. Like and again, only my opinion, believe that there's been so much focus toward the empowerment of women, and we've done a lot of work, and there's a lot of awareness and awakening there that men are kind of a bit like, oh, well, what do I do now? Like, do I be that masculine, chivalrous man, or do I step back and let her take charge? And they're a bit lost, and the way that I sort of came into inviting men into my work was that the women I'm working with are like, can you talk to a son, a partner, so it's like, yeah, okay, let's expand that out a bit. So the process of coaching, while similar, the men that I've experienced, and again, it's like a handful of men so far that I've coached, who they prefer a much more systems driven process, and they're like a lot more direct coaching, and they really keen to learn. Like, what I've noticed is that they're really keen to absorb it because they're quite confused. So again, they come to me, there'll be a combination of work stuff, like, oh, I've gotten in trouble at work, or reputation's been damaged, or this thing has happened, and relationship stuff. And the way that they have been conditioned to show up, and the way that's been okay for them in the past, isn't really okay anymore, especially in relationship. We're expecting a lot more from men in relationship now, right? And so they can get a bit
What do you think
lost.
that is? Sorry to interrupt, but what do you
That's
think that
okay.
the new expectations of men are in relationships?
Yeah, to be a lot more emotionally intelligent, is putting it simply. So I think previously, and looking back over generations, if a man could provide through a job and through money for a family, that's really all he needed to do. Be a good guy, provide security and safety. Now we're looking for emotional and psychological safety in the relationship, and we're looking for, them to be engaged as fathers. And I always say, like, women have 6 language centers. They can talk a million miles an hour about 17 things at once, and men have 2 language centers, and they are like, what in the hell is she talking about? So learning to communicate differently, like I said, slowing the women down, and giving the guys time to actually express themselves. And vulnerability is massive risk for a lot of men. You know what I mean? So really creating that, if we move into that functional, feminine space where men feel safe to be a bit more vulnerable, but women are so tired of it. They're like, oh my God, I haven't got the time and energy. It's like, well, and that's your work to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's so massive. And like I said, I sat on that one. Well, I didn't say, but when I decided to do it, I was like, oh, shouldn't I? Like, my branding is really towards empowerment of women. But going through my own separation, and 2 years down the track, and how we've navigated that, and all the work that I've done, I have a real compassion for the male in these situations as well. And I'm like, I actually think I've got quite a bit of value to bring in this space. So like I said, I've done the one-on-one coaching with them, and I've just opened up my events for everyone. I've had to change the titles and change the names, and change the branding and everything, and let's just start letting them creep in so that we can expand that message.
Awesome. Yeah, because
Yeah.
what I've noticed, and I've had a couple of conversations with various people about this, but what I've
Mm.
noticed is that that it's almost like the masculine has become frowned upon in quite a few ways.
Absolutely.
And so,
and like you say, what do you do then? Like, well, what do I do? How do I be a strong man and be a soft man? Like, how do I do this? And women have become quite masculine too.
they have.
That's definitely where I was. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
definitely
for
a big
sure.
journey that I've been on. Yeah.
For sure. In fact, that reminds me of a story that I think would be relevant to what we're talking about. But I'll come back to that. So
All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so masculinity is being frowned upon in many ways. And the conversation I had with this friend of mine, he's actually a PT, but he's been around for a while. And he said, now there's these two extremes. There's this sort of homogenized man on one end of the spectrum, which is a man that's meant to be almost like you said, emotionally intelligent, provide psychological safety, and have this sort of increased sensibility. And then on the other end,
like a woman. Yeah.
yes, more like a woman.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got all these special forces guys, tearing around the place, suggesting that you need to be this alpha male, this, this, testosterone, beast of like aggro, shouting, masculine kind of man, and it's confusing. It's like
it's terribly confusing.
Like that, because that's not the way it works, but
that's
it's
not actual masculinity, is it?
No, but it's typical media. It's always having two extremes, left and right, black and white, all this this extreme crap, and it's like anything, it's a combination of things, and I don't think I think being emotionally intelligent is really important. I think providing psychological safety is important, and I think at some points it makes sense to to have that really strong masculine side, but
absolutely,
we're being forced to sort of choose a side, and I just think that's bullshit.
Oh, that's exactly right. And this is why I did a conversation in my Facebook group on International Women's Day, because I used to be quite opposed to the vibe of International Women's Day. It came from a place of victimhood, right? And yeah, we're good enough, and like, don't tell us we're not, kind of thing. And it's like, well, the fact that you think you're not is what's coming through there,
Yeah.
And this year I said it felt like it came from more of a place of celebration and empowerment, and it felt more inclusive. And there's this real us against them thing that happens between men and women, and it's really not the solution. Like, men, we need men to be men because they provide what a man can provide, and we need women to be women because they provide what a woman can provide. Now, the ideations of that is different for everybody, but we can't all be the same. This is why I struggle around the equality conversation. I'm like, equity, yes, I want the same opportunities, but I am not a man. And again, a lot of women have moved into that masculine space because they feel like the men in their life are a bit useless and can't. And there's a mismatch here of the masculine and feminine polarity, because there's almost like it's weak or it's wrong to go back to those traditional male female roles, and again, let's examine the things that come with those traditional roles. It doesn't have to be done the way it was done 100 years ago, but we certainly, like, I definitely want a guy opening the door for me and taking care of me, rather than be like, I can do it myself. Yeah, absolutely, I can do it myself, but it's nice to have you do it for me, So not from a place of disempowerment, but from a place of receiving and, allowing him to be the leader. And I think that's really messy at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It's so blurred. The example that I flashed on before when we were talking was a friend of mine who was she was married and she was going through a divorce, and the guy that she was married to was a lawyer, and he was from South Africa, so he sort of had that that sort of South African people, they have that.
They're very direct.
That's the Dutch thing. It's very direct. It's very, very it is
Matter
quite,
of fact.
it's a masculine place, where
Yeah.
men are men and, women are women and all the rest of it. And this guy was a lawyer. So, he's going through a divorce process and no one's going to push him around because, he knows the law. He's a lawyer and all this stuff. And so I was chatting to her and she said, oh, it's just I said, how's it all going? She said, oh, it's terrible. It's just, I've tried everything and he wants this and, and I'm not going to let him get away with this. And, and she was very in her kind of, boisterous, masculine butting heads, I'm strong. I'm not going to get pushed over on this. And, da, 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 da. And so I sort of, got to the end of her kind of monologue, as she was explaining to me what was going on. And I said to her, have you tried being vulnerable?
Oh.
And she said, what do you mean? She said,
Yeah.
And I said, well, answer me this. I said, are you upset about it? Are you upset that the relationship, the marriage, you've got 2 kids, are you upset that it's come to an end? She said, yeah, I'm devastated. I said, well, why don't you show him? Why don't you explain to him how upset you are that it's ending? Why don't you reveal that part of how you're feeling? Because obviously the boisterous, butting heads thing isn't working. So why don't you try that? And this was, contextually, this was at bloody, Saracen Brewery in the middle of Oktoberfest. I'm standing there with this. This is when I did drink. I was like standing with a bloody pint with a stein of beer in my hand, and I just didn't even think. That the end of the conversation ended. I didn't think anything else about it until about, I reckon it must have been about probably 8 months later. I bumped into her at the supermarket, and she sort of ran up to me and she said, "Oh, how you going?" I said, "Yeah, good." I said, "How are you going?" She said, "Yeah, really good." I go, and she said, what you suggested that I did when we caught up last? And I said, yeah, I do. She says, it worked. And I went, isn't that interesting?
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't that interesting?
Exactly.
She said that was the thing that sparked the collaborative process of
opening
completing
the door,
and completing the separation, getting the financial stuff sorted, and they were both able to move, in their separate ways, and they've got a fantastic relationship. They co-parent brilliantly, with their kids.
Amazing. That's one of your special gifts, though, John. That little nuggets of like bomb drops. That's what you do. You did the same thing to me ages ago. You dropped a bomb about the book Nonviolent Communication.
Yes.
Yeah, and that changed everything. Like I said, that seems to be one of your magic gifts where you're just like, just in passing, like you said about leading people to the solution, not telling them what they need. If you'd said to that woman, you need to be more vulnerable, she would have rejected you immediately.
Yeah.
Your magic around the whole, like, I don't know, here's the bomb if you want it. Like, she gets to take it, and it just changes everything.
Yeah, it was bizarre because I just, it was sort of just an intuitive suggestion. With only with maybe a 2 or I knew them both quite well, so I knew the 2 personalities, but it was just hey, have you tried this?
Yeah, 100%. It's always the solution, isn't it? And like I said, I think again in personal development, there was a period of time, and I'm guilty of this myself, where it was like, be stronger, go harder, provide more of a push, you know what I mean? And it's like, actually, then we're just going to end up at war.
Yeah.
And nobody's happy, whereas we can let our guards down. The analogy that I use with men is like they've probably built up a brick wall in front of them, and we're just going to take one brick down at a time because it's a bit overwhelming to let all those guards down all at once, isn't it? But when you let those guards down, you let all the love in as well. You let all the good stuff in, and not just keep all the bad stuff out. So yeah, absolutely. Vulnerability is massive.
And you mentioned nonviolent communication. I'm curious, have you, that's the only, I'll talk about this. It's the only audio book that I've listened to more than 5 times. Like
multiple times.
I'm on my 6th listen to that audio book, and that never happens with me. I don't listen to stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, me neither. I'm a one and done booking the book well, but same. And I refer it all the time. I think the most valuable piece of information that I got from that one was that when someone is communicating, they're trying to make you understand, they're trying to make you feel the way they feel. So when they're being a bit irrational, we can respond to that irrationality, or we can look one step behind it and go, hang on a minute, are you feeling like this? And it's just so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. You know, like his Marshall Rosenberg, just in case anyone's listening and wants to check it out. But and it's the one with the peace sign on it. It's that's the one to get. But the example that he uses when he's talking to the young girl that's come from an abusive family, and he has multiple sessions with her over what I think I remember it being like, you know, maybe a couple of months. And each session she would come in and she wouldn't say anything, and all he would do is just observe what he could see happening within her. You know, like I sense that you're a little bit, you know, or I sense that you're scared. You know, I can sense that you perhaps don't feel confident enough to share with me what's going on. And then over time she started to talk, you know, because all he was doing was just observing rather than, and then that's that fine line between observing and judging, you know, rather than just observing what you sense in someone,
and creating a trust for her as well, you know, saying like, hey, I sense this is going on. Because when the word sense as well, rather than it looks like you or I feel like you, it's like, oh, I sense this around. It's very, you know, open, isn't it? It's not you or me. It's just like, oh, maybe this is right. And it creates a trust
maybe this is right,
absolutely.
but maybe I've got it wrong, you know.
100%,
maybe I'm observing this incorrectly.
Putting the power back in her court, I think, which is you know, and when we were saying earlier in the conversation, John, that piece of the line where you're having to observe yourself, like, so I read that book, I studied that book, I was like, that makes so much sense, and then I effed it up time and time again, you know. But again, looking at it with the observation of like, I reacted again and I didn't, and now it's you know, much more second nature for me to go, hang on a minute, is this how you're feeling? But it certainly didn't start that way, you know. So giving yourself that timeline to relearn a habit that you've had for a lifetime.
My favorite example was I went on this retreat to Karamas in Bali. It was like a surf kind of business thing that a friend of mine was hosting, and so of course I put my hand up and said that I'd come along and talk, just so that I could go surfing for like a week. And we were surfing Karamas, and Karamas is you know, a lot of the breaks in Bali have become very localized. Like when surfers first started going to Bali, there really wasn't any Balinese surfing, but over time they've started surfing, and they've started surfing really well. And you know, they can see what's going on through social media, what happens in other parts of the world, and so they've become very localized, which means that, you know, the locals will hog waves, and they can get quite nasty to tourists, you know, which has sort of just, you know, evolved over the years. And so I was out, and the other thing that happens is that there's guides now. So there's Balinese guides that will take, and in most cases it's like a group of Japanese tourists, and they'll take them surfing, and the Japanese tourists will pay them so that they can, you know, go surfing at a particular break. But what the Balinese do is that they hassle all the other people out in the water so that the Japanese guys get the waves.
They've got the space,
because that's what they're being paid to do. And so we were surfing at the main break at Karamas, and there was and you know, I'd been sitting out there waiting, very, very patient. I'm a patient person. I'd been sitting there waiting very politely and very patiently for a wave. And so I took off on this wave, and I was already on it, and one of these Japanese guys took off behind me, it's the person who gets on the wave first has right away. But it looked like I had actually dropped in on this Japanese guy, and to the Balinese guy, especially, you know, this particular guy, he's a, you know, really good surfer. He's probably the most prolific local out there. And so because I'd been waiting patiently, I just kept going. I didn't pull out. And I got to the end, And I flicked out, and this guy's paddling towards me, and he's just
feel
so angry. And it's there's a couple of things going on. There's it's his work, it's how he gets his money. And so he's not only it's more a show.
Yeah, it's his reputation now.
Yes, it's his reputation.
Yeah.
So he's he's paddling towards me, and he's just, in his broken sort of English, just spitting out, the C word and the F word, and just throwing every insult possible. And he's and in the back of my mind, I'm going, non-violent communication. So I'm like,
right, don't react.
So I'm sitting there, and I'm going, I can see that you're angry.
Jesus, how'd that go down?
And he's going, stop talking. And he's going, you go in now. And I'm like, and I know that this is the way that you make your money. And I can see that you're angry. I can see that you're upset about this.
Oh God.
And he's saying, go in. And I'm like, I'm not going in. And then I looked around, and, I looked around me out in the water, and there was not one white person.
Oh, they all run away.
And they were starting to crowd around me in the lineup. I'm going, oh my God, I'm the only whitey out here.
Like a schoolyard fight, John. You're like, start chanting.
It was so heavy. It was so heavy.
Oh my God.
Oh,
how'd you pull out of that one? Did he back out?
Yeah, he did. He did in the end.
He did. Yeah, right. And you stayed in the water?
I did. I said, I'm not going in.
Man, you need to write to the people that wrote that book and be like, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's a pretty intimidating situation to be in. I think I'd be like, okay, I'll go in, and then I'll come back and talk to you or whatever. That's a pretty big way to hold your space, especially I know what the surfing culture's like. It's life or death out there,
Oh yeah, it was full on.
That's a massive testimonial for that method of communication.
Yeah, I didn't go in either. I think, I just
good on you.
I said, nah, I'm not going in. And then I sort of sat there, like, and then I put my hands up. And because he was, like tiny compared to me, but he had had all the locals around him, all the rest of it, and I put my hands up like that because I thought he was going to like put his board in the water and let it spring out, and that was why I put my hands up. But as soon as I put my hands up, he just went like this.
Like felt the threat of it.
Yeah, because
right.
But it ended up working out okay, I think.
Oh wow, magical. Yeah. Well, you got, you held your ground. I think that's important.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
and he didn't punch you in the face. So
what an acid test for bloody non-violent communication.
Oh, absolutely. My heart's racing just listening to it. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean though. Like, what a testimonial for that method of communication. Like, again, there's nowhere that it can't be utilized. But again, when we're emotional, we're not always thinking that way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I certainly had high anxiety in that moment for sure.
Oh, wow. I bet you did. Yeah, but those moments, they teach you you're alive, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Nicky, I'm mindful of the time, but it's been so awesome chatting to you. I really enjoyed our discussion today. And I think everyone that listens I think there's something in it for so many different people.
I know. I think we've gone a few different directions.
We have. We've talked about heaps of stuff. I think it'll be super valuable. So thank you again for coming on. It's always a pleasure chatting to you. Is there any particular resource or spot that you think that people that are interested would be a good place to begin their journey with you, or any of your resources that you want to suggest?
Well, I think just connect with me on social media. Like I said, I'm just about to relaunch my live events here in Perth. I still do my online events. So just connect with me on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. And then, drop in and say hi. If you found something particularly useful, let me know. But otherwise, just chat.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. And I will talk to you soon.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, John.
You've been listening to Master Dealmaker Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies and maximize your sales process with new episodes every other week. and double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive, free, no fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.